Hello, everyone. We are back, back after a little hiatus, but that is life. What is life if not a series of interruptions? We're back with Elliot. Hello, Elliot. We're
Hey.
yeah, we're back, and we're talking about foxes and lions today. And some people in certain online spaces might recognize this discourse. It's a thing that's been talked about ad nauseum. And so apologies for adding to the nausea potentially.
All
We
right.
hope not. I think this is going to be like I hope this is going to be like an Imodium tablet. This is going to be like a Pepto. This is like theory Pepto. It's like, everyone talks about foxes, lions. Oh my gosh, or we're ruled by foxes. We need more lions, and there's a really hyper autist kind of reaction against crafty people in power. And I'm not hating on anyone. I enjoy listening to people such as Aaron McIntyre, and I think it's nice that people at least are talking about this. But I think there's been sort of an unfair. Um, I think foxes are unfairly maligned, and I think that what unfortunately has happened is that in people pointing out that we're ruled by cunning foxes, I think there's sort of an overcorrection happening, and that there's this idea that we need to be ruled by lions, as if lions don't go and eat their own young, which they do. The idea that lions equals always better is weird to me. The idea that foxes never good, never based foxes, only cringe foxes is ridiculous. So we're going to be getting all into that today. Obviously, those are that's my introduction. I think Elliot will have a slightly different take than I do, but I think Elliot, we've talked very long and very detail orientedly about this before we recorded, and I think we've reached a level of, I don't want to say consensus, but I think we're more or less on the same page. Not that that's the
Right.
goal, but I think we've reached a level of, I don't want to say consensus, but I think we're moving on the same path, maybe on parallel tracks somewhat.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So for those people who are not quite hip on the discourse, and it's okay if you're not, because you probably hopefully have a life and are doing more important things than autistically reading Machiavelli, and then looking at how Machiavellian discourses are working in the, I guess, broadly RW space. Although who really know? I mean, a lot of people talk about this stuff. We're talking about foxes and lions, sort of in um, we're at least starting with Machiavelli's ideas about this, right? And so if people have not read Machiavelli, that's totally fine. I do recommend reading The Prince. It is very short. There's some good English translations out there. You do not need to buy it. There's some good, was it public domain English translations.
I'll link
Uh,
you to the YouTube video that I listened to. I really liked it because it's updated to modern English in the sense that it doesn't sort of slavishly do like a King James version,
right.
and it correctly interrupts all the time with very helpful footnotes. It's kind of like, I never recommend reading Sun Tzu without the commentary, because if you don't have the commentary that's like, hey, by the way, we're talking about this general who did this, right? They
Right.
always insert, like, Machiavelli couldn't say the name of this prince because that would have been a hilariously bad idea. So here's
Yeah,
his name and what he was
yeah.
doing.
He was trying not to get assassinated, right? Like, well, for making comments and things. Yeah. So for people
Well,
who
he'd
don't, I
just
mean,
gotten tortured. So,
right, yeah, this is not ultimately an episode on the history of Machiavelli, or of, like, 16th century Italian politics. We're using Machiavelli as a jumping off point for our own ideas, because that's, I think, what I've been seeing in, like, at least the Twitter discourse, is people are taking Machiavelli's broad concepts and then doing their own stuff with it, which is, by the way, totally normal. This is, Machiavelli was reinterpreting a lot of old sources and ideas from antiquity. This is, people have always done this. So if there's many good YouTube readings of Machiavelli, there's great YouTube historians giving a perspective on Machiavelli that's sort of his time. We're not doing that. We're doing our own typical wandering humanist thing. We're expounding upon this and saying, that is so great. Thank you, Machiavelli, for talking about this stuff. We are now going to promptly, completely change it and do what we would like to do with it. And and hope, and who knows, right? I don't, who knows? The internet is forever. Maybe 200 years from now, somebody finds this obscure small channel. I don't think this is going to happen. And then they reinterpret what we said. I highly, highly doubt that's going to happen. That's almost guaranteed not to happen. But it's no reason for us to not do it, right? Just because we will be forgotten by history does not mean that we shouldn't care about it. Right? It matters for us, and hopefully for you all who watch this, you find it our artistic rants at least mildly entertaining, or maybe this is an ASMR video for you. In which case, it's okay. Thank you for that. ASMR Machiavelli. No. So yeah. In The Prince, right? Probably really his most famous. It's his most famous work. The one he's most remembered for, right? It's the one that, like, cutthroat business bros read. Like, I read it next to, you said Sun Tzu, I read it next to The Art of War, and I'm becoming more of a Chad. It's a lot of people read The Prince. I don't know how many people really think about it. It seems like something that you just read and you're supposed to just like automatically become Andrew Tate, which is not how philosophy works. You have to kind of think about it and critically evaluate it. But in chapter 18, again, the book itself is really about a wide variety of topics, but largely having to deal with like how monarchs or people who hold positions of power, broadly defined as prince, whatever that really, fill in the blanks here, maintain power or lose power or gain power. It's a lot about power dynamics in a political sense. In chapter 18, which I believe, let me get the title right here, in my translation at least, concerning the way in which princes should keep faith, Machiavelli sort of starts talking about, princes who act, there's sort of two different kind of archetypes, right? And that most princes, most people in power will oscillate between them, but that there tends to be people tend towards one or tend towards the other, lions and foxes. So again, this is not we are sort of taking these concepts as presented by Machiavelli and then doing our own stuff on it. So if you're interested in what Machiavelli has to say about it, I can link to the chapter in the show notes. I recommend.
And frankly, it's not that much. It's
not that much.
What, 6 pages total?
It's like 6 pages. I would also recommend just reading the whole thing, because then you get the whole broad concept or context of what Machiavelli's talking about. But we're sort of just we're jumping in medias res. So if this is not making sense to you, apologies. I think you'll get it organically, because I think as we go, we're going to be expounding upon at least our understanding of foxes and lions, which is, I think, a little different than Machiavelli's, and that's okay too, right? So that's as most quick and clumsy of an introduction as I could possibly give. Elliott, had you read Machiavelli before this? I think you had, right? Or was this
no? So I hadn't read Machiavelli before this, partly because it's interesting to see how these sorts of memes and counter memes work. Right. So I had already read like stuff like The Art of War and the 48 Laws of Power and the 32 Strategies of War and all that
American
stuff.
Psycho works like this. Fight Club.
No, I didn't watch American Psycho until much later, and I was like, "Holy shit!"
Oh my god, he's literally me. Yeah. Okay. Anyhow. Yeah.
Well, I was like, well. Anyway, regardless, point being is that we don't have anywhere to channel our warrior instincts anymore, right? Not that I'm a buff or a warrior by any means, but probably would have been something like it at one point, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, regardless, point being is that I hadn't read Machiavelli before, partly because I was like, well, I am almost guaranteeing you that he's already been totally covered by 48 Laws of Power and The Art of War. Like, I don't know what else he would be adding at that point. Not to say that he was, obviously people coming later can eclipse people who came previously. But it was nice to read, partly because in these trying times in which we find ourselves, it's just good to see that it's all the same old shit. Yeah. Nothing's ever changed.
It's really
like right-wingers. I think that this whole should we be lions, should we be foxes type of discussion that I see with right wingers, eminentizing the eschaton, if you will, right? It's like, nah. The one strength of right wing is that nothing ever changes. Everything's always the same, right? And you could see this with Machiavelli, where you're like, holy shit, literally nothing has changed at all.
Yeah, I mean, Machiavelli's talking about ancient Greeks or Persians and or Romans as if they're contemporaries of his. And he's right. I mean, that's the far past for him. And
he's 1400, right?
Yeah, he's 1500s. 1500s. Yeah.
15. Okay. Yeah.
14 to 15. But yeah. Mostly
Yeah,
mostly 16th century, right? Like is the big is
sure,
his
sure.
big is
Yes,
when
of
he's
course.
really he puts a toe into politics and then is like, I don't like this and I'm gonna go. I don't want to be tortured and I don't want to be involved in this stuff anymore. And then he writes about it. But yeah, no, the point is that like even
Turns
for
out he's
his
a good theorist, not a good practical.
yeah, no, and maybe there's something we could talk about there too. But you know, he's referencing the ancient past for him as if it's modern for him, current, contemporary for him. And I think this gives us permission, perhaps not that we needed it, but it might give some other people some permission to go, you know, you can read Machiavelli as if it's happening now, because a lot of the things are very jump out at you. The way that power dynamics happen, the way that, you know, people in power curry favor or not from their subjects, right? The way that elites uh shape public opinion and the way that public opinion shapes elite decisions, all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's as we are all getting more and more connected and you start to see more and more of how the sausage is made, so to speak, it it jives pretty well. It feels like
Well, you
something that's
see,
almost written today, I think. That's
no,
just me.
100%.
Yeah.
No, no, it's very interesting, right? Because in particular, the thing that I was meditating on before we got on this call was basically when he said, look, the king should not be the slave. He doesn't say it like this, but he's like, the king should not be the slave of the church. It's the prince's job to be sufficiently in line with the moral authorities, with the mythical, sense of what the public and the powers that be think a king ought to be. But you can't be too goody two shoes about it, because at the end of the day, power is about betrayal and cutting throats and making friends for the purpose of strategic alliance, not making friends because he's a really good guy. He talks about this earlier, but he's like, look, there's plenty of good people that are totally useless to you. Oh, sorry, Rules for Rulers is the book that pretty much I think is the modern adaptation of
Okay.
Machiavelli.
I haven't
It's
read
a
that one
very
yet.
good book. No,
Yeah.
no, it's there's a short YouTube thing on it. But anyway, point being is that, uh, my favorite thing about I think one of the most important verses in the Bible, at least in terms of with respect to the state, is when Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint Solomon king, right? But they're not like, inducting him into the priesthood. They're
Right.
anointing him king. So they're saying, look, we're giving you the blessing to go be autonomous and separate from us, but like we're still interfacing with you, if that makes sense,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. No. And obviously, Machiavelli's writing in a time period where the Pope is still very much a temporal power, the papacy, let's say, and the Pope, but the papacy itself is very much
Mm-hmm.
temporal. You know, there's papal armies and stuff like that. I mean, it's a different. It's in many. It's one of those things where, as different as it is from today, it is still very much the same.
Right,
Um,
because academics are our current priesthood, so
Pretty much, yeah, right. Yeah, but if you can just transpose a few, if you can tamp down the autism for 2 seconds and transpose those
yes.
things, then it starts making really good sense, I think. So anyhow, please do go read it. It's a classic. Whether you agree with Machiavelli or not, you should read it. It's a classic of Western thought. I do think it's relevant. It's not just obscure and academic in interest. I think it actually explains a lot of things with our world today. Anyhow, so the concepts of foxes and lions. This is its own little section of the book, chapter 18, I believe. Yes, chapter 18. Machiavelli throws out these archetypes, and it's kind of interesting as a brief, yet a brief aside, another brief aside. Machiavelli is not drawing these archetypes ex nihilo. He's not drawing them from the nether. He's not even creating them. He's doing his own things with them. These were pre-existing archetypes of political action. There is,
It goes all the way back to Aesop's fables, right?
it does, and you can also, but even more contemporary, contemporary source for Machiavelli was this has been proven. He's drawing from the Reynard sort of folk epic that the fox Reynard the fox. There's different versions, right? In German you get like Reineke Fuchs, van den Fosse Renarde in Dutch. You get there's various different versions. the same, more or less the same story, which is about Reynard the fox. So sort of think of like anthropomorphized beast fables, right? We've done a little bit of that on this channel with Fred in a previous episode, looking at Wind in the Willows, right? Think about, you know, worlds such as Wind in the Willows, worlds such as Redwall, where, you know, you have, you know, little woodland creatures and or animals act like humans, right? And it's a way of talking about humanity through the lens of anthropomorphized animals. Watership Down, for example, stories like this. There's a long history of that worldwide. Obviously, this is a folklore that's coming out of older, you know, mythology, but like in contemporary times for Machiavelli, the Reynard sort of folk epic was very much a thing. People did know it. We know this. People were writing various versions of it, and it was interesting because it's one of these folk epics that has slightly different versions, slightly different variations in different parts of Europe. And so people in different parts of Europe, different parts or different languages are writing kind of the same story with different variations. Think of like comic books, right? Where there's always like, is it Spider-Man or Amazing Spider-Man, right? Or is it, you know, there's different iterations of the same heroes. Reynard is not a hero. He's sort of an anti-hero. Think big time like Taylor, like Swiftie. Yeah, think of Taylor Swift. Anti-hero, right? She didn't invent anti-heroes, but maybe she is one. The idea that, you know, Reynard the Fox is a cunning dude, and he's willing to cut throats, and he's not really a good guy at all. He is intensely ruthless, but intensely cunning. He's not like a lion at all, right? A lion's going to go out there and maybe say like, you know, I am a lion, I'm going to eat you, chomp. Now you are dead, and I am lion still. Very lion-like thing to do. A fox is going to be like, hey, badger, or hey, hare, or hey, you know, various other animals in the court. Don't you feel like the lions are just not doing a good job? Don't you feel like they just haven't been representing the rest of us animals pretty well? Don't you feel like we should do something with them? And so that is like, so even the point is that Machiavelli is drawing from pre-existing stuff. So everyone, it's turtles all the way down. People are always drawing from previous time periods. This has just been normal for humanity to do. So that also gives us even more permission to do our own twist on this. But again, like in the Reynard sort of a mythos, if you will, Reynard's not a good guy at all. He's a scoundrel, and you're not really supposed to root for him at all. But Machiavelli is attempting, right, and he says this very explicitly earlier in The Prince, he's attempting to temporarily remove morality from the discussion. And so people always misinterpret Machiavelli as being like sort of a crazy proto-Nietzschean dude who has no morals, no ethics. No, he's not, and that's a completely false misreading of Machiavelli. Machiavelli never says you shouldn't be moral. He's saying, in order to stay in power, this. That's what he's talking about. And so what better kind of, you know, archetypes to choose than two predatory animals, foxes and lions, but they're predatory in very different ways, incredibly different ways. And again, I'm not a biologist or a zoologist, but you can watch enough nature documentaries to see this, right? Like how do lions interact with the world? How do foxes interact with the world? Very differently, right? Like if you think particularly of like male lions, right? Not the females of the pride, but male lions, right? What is their job? It's to kind of like reproduce and kill other lions that are male lions that are trying to come in, and or exterminate the young who were sired by other lions, right? So, you know, lions tend to get upheld in Western thought as, oh, like the lion is a noble animal. Lion is like, you know, there's obviously biblical allusions to lions. Think very much in the Aslan sense here. But also, right, at the same time, there's a dark side to lions, and even the Bible acknowledges this, right? Like the lion is seen as sort of like, there's the lion of the tribe of Judah, but then also the devil is referred to as a lion prowling and consuming. So there again, these archetypes are very tricky, right? They're like the good and the bad. We'll get to that in a few minutes here, but like Machiavelli is using these to just bring things to mind. You have lions, very bold, very brash. They go out, they announce themselves, right? They roar as lions, big dick energy, doing things. They smolder when they look into the camera when they're indicted. You know, these kinds of things. Like they have a mane, the coif that goes here. What? You know, stuff like that. Then you have foxes. Foxes are not so it's not that foxes don't care about have an ego. They do have an ego, but their ego is more wrapped up. This is my interpretation. So Elliott, I'll cede the talking stick to you in a few seconds, and we'll see. You may disagree with me here, but this is sort of how
Well, right, because we're sort of comparing and contrasting our worldviews on this for the
well, this is me. So this is me.
So yes,
so this is me. So that's a lion.
Go ahead. Yep,
so then what's a fox?
Yep.
Fox is not like some egoless, humble person. No. The fox very much believes in himself and likes himself and wants himself to succeed. But the fox is willing to use subterfuge to do that, and he's also willing to the fox doesn't necessarily need to take credit for things like a lion does. The fox just wants things to work out in the way he wants them to work out. And he's willing to do that in an underhanded way. Sometimes he's willing to use other people to get what he wants. And he's willing to use intelligence as opposed to just pure strength. Or not even intelligence. Let's say cunning. Applied intelligence to undermine the plans of his enemies, as opposed to just going out and ripping their throats out, right? Foxes themselves, right, are predatory animals. They're carnivores. They do rip throats, but they have smaller jaws, right? They can't do what a lion does. They have to sneak into the hen house and maybe take 1-2 hens. But very rarely is a fox going to go in and kill. I mean, maybe if they're really hungry or you get a really testy fox, they're not maybe going to take every single hen. They're going to take 1, 2, right? Because they kind of want to. They're like, oh, I can come back here and get more hens. This is tasty, right? Whereas at least a male lion is like, oh, these cubs were not sired by me. They're all dead because I'm in charge now. So just that's I guess how I conceive of these archetypes. Again, temporarily taking morals and ethics completely out of it and just looking at power, the way that lions and foxes interact with power. That's how I kind of view these. Elliott probably is going to have a different take, so I will do my best to shut up and let you, Elliott, like how do you view lions and foxes, I guess, is what I'm really asking here.
Right. So I think, and I have a slightly different system to think through these sorts of things, although I think the lion fox dichotomy is totally fine. But basically, here's how I think about it, right? Is I'll just kind of add a few points to what you were just saying, and then maybe introduce a totally different way of thinking about this,
okay.
Which is to say that horses and zebras. What are the difference between horses and zebras, right? A horse is a social creature. That's why we have horses, right? All we got to do is roll up, see who is top horse, wreck his shit, and then the rest of the pack says, well, okay, I guess that guy's top,
the pack,
right? The rest of the horse herd, right? Is like, there you go. But zebras are not like this. They kind of clump together. But the reason why they have stripes is so that it's harder to see which individual zebra is where, right? Because they don't actually look out for each other, right? So horses, in that first scenario, if they're rolling around with each other, they got their little posse, right? They're going to help each other out. Where zebras, it's like, hey, you got to run faster than the slowest zebra. That's all that matters, right? And they don't give a shit, right? So what does that have to do with lions? Well, lions are, so the key distinguishing factor between those two animals is that one's social and one is kind of parasocial, asocial, right? So the social ones, the ones that can implement hierarchies, are lions versus, say, like a leopard or whatever, leopard or
a fox, right? Fox,
is a tiger.
Or
a
like,
tiger,
well, sorry,
right?
to jump in. Sorry,
for an animal, right? But yeah,
that's the thing I forgot to mention is that foxes are also solitary hunters. They're not pack animals. They're not like
yes,
and they're not like dogs and wolves, right? They're a different branch. Somebody's going to quote vulpēs is the Latin name. That's like the vulpine branch or whatever it is of the canine family. Somebody correct me. It's a different evolutionary path that they took, and so they're canines, but they don't howl. They do have that weird, what does the fox say? That sound that they make. They're off on their own, right? And they have their little fox families. Sometimes they live under a tree. Yeah, no, it's a good point. Foxes are non-hierarchical.
They're non-social.
Yeah, they're not social.
Right.
Sorry, continue.
Right.
It's a good point. I should have said
No, you're good. No. Well, I mean, yeah, like, because this is the critical thing, right? Is that lions are kind of unique amongst the big cats in that they have this hierarchical structure. Now, there's pros and cons to this, right? So the pros, as Machiavelli points out, is that means that lions are able to take on wolves because wolves are also packs. They're also social creatures. So you want a lion in your court when you're rolling up against a fellow tribe, but they will kill their own young because they have to maintain that dominance hierarchy. And so maybe that's when you want a fox who is going to be less brutal potentially because they don't have to maintain a social dominance hierarchy.
And a fox is going to be maybe less invested in a fox's success, and what a fox cares about is less I don't want to say it's less, it's not that they don't have an ego again, but it's like they want to succeed. They're maybe a little bit more they're more individual.
It's less about appearances.
Less about appearance and more about this is how I view I think that foxes are more outcome focused, but that's maybe just me.
Yes.
I think the foxes care about a good outcome as opposed to looking good in the outcome.
Yes. And to be clear, like, okay, what's the key difference between, in our heads, right, between a male lion and a female lion? I mean, frankly, a female lion can wreck your shit just as well as a male lion, if we're being honest, right? So the key difference is that fear factor, because the male lion has that big ass mane. Well, if you shave a lion's mane, it's a classic trope, Samson has the same sort of mythological thing that as soon as you shave his hair, like he loses all his powers. Same thing for a lion, right? So, it's if I'm going to be minimally charitable to all the podcast bros saying we need more lions, it's because they want to appear as lions. That is to say, they don't give a shit about getting things done, and podcasts are all about fucking appearances, right? So,
and we're partly guilty in that, in our ramblings, but okay.
No, but this is the thing, right? Like that's how. So that being said, if we abstract this a little bit, my conception to my kind of approach to this came from a totally different direction, which was I was out hiking around in the Alaskan wilderness, thinking about bears, right? And because I've noticed that black bears are on the most part total wusses, right? Like you don't want to mess with a female black bear, but like you can chase a black bear off just fine. Right. And it's like, well, why is that? Right. It's like, well, because big things, there's fundamentally two different strategies for fighting in nature. I haven't really been able to think of a second one. Right. There's either be strong or be venomous, so to speak. Right now, in venomous, I'm really throwing a lot of stuff in there. Right. But basically, there's either be overwhelming force or a trap of some sort, right? And so I originally thought about it in terms of bears and snakes, right? Bears and spiders, right? Because everybody is not everybody. There's a lot of people who are really afraid of spiders or snakes, and a lot of people that like would very stupidly go up and try to pet a lion, right? We're actually way more intimidated by something that frankly is much more feeble, but it's because there's been millennia of sort of marketing going on, right? So the lion has like really big, flashy, like Bud Light commercial marketing, whereas the snake has much more sort of subtle, like long-term marketing of like, if you see this, like just like Jordan Peterson says, right? We are actually better at seeing diamonds in the lower half of our vision, which is why the HOV lane has diamonds in it, because of snakes. Because our ancestors kept getting got by snakes that climb trees, and a diamond shape was the best way to recognize that happening, right? So snakes, creatures all around the animal kingdom fear snakes. And the reason why, settled on snakes as opposed to like poison frogs or whatever is because one day I was looking at the demiurge, a picture of the demiurge. I was like, holy shit, that's a lion snake. And sure enough, literally the demiurge symbology is meant to be the synthesis of a lion and snake. And, in thinking through it, I was like, well, hold on. If you're a lion, I've seen this happen where people start to tap out if they're lions, right? Like, so in a like a corporate environment or a leadership environment, I've seen people who are headstrong and brave, but frankly simple, they might not be dumb, but they're very linear thinkers, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen people like me who are much more sneaky and subtle, but I literally cannot run to save my life, right?
Right.
So I've seen people who are both subtle and brave, right? And they were able to take my advice on the side, and they are able to win the affection and the sort of they're able to get the respect of the brave types. And I was like, oh snap, that's somebody who can move heaven and earth. That's the demiurge. That's a dragon, right? So in my sort of symbology, I had thought for a really long time that you have lions, you have snakes, and when you synthesize, when you take both, essentially Machiavelli's ideal prince, you get a dragon, right? They're able to fly, they have all these supernatural powers, they can start writing, like blah blah blah, all these things, right? They have lots of treasure and women and all these, that's kind of the holy grail of
What you're saying, the prototate?
Yeah, right. The prototate.
They have
Machiavelli.
a lot of Bugattis. They have a lot of Bugattis. Many Bugattis. Yeah.
And he smokes the cheapest cigars, the literal training wheels of cigars, Romeo and Julieta. Like,
yeah.
Holy shit, what trash taste in cigars. Anyway, point being is that, so then Colin and I were having this long-standing argument about, like, how foxes are not snakes. And I was like, well, fair enough. And
sorry, I'll just one quick thing. I mean, I'll put my, I identify. So I will say this, and everyone's going to go, oh my God. So this is not some furry shit we're talking about here. But I think my archetype is, I am a very fox-like kind of personality. I think, and I always kind of have been. I realize this now. By that, I don't mean I want to go kill all your hens. I don't mean that. By that, I mean, like, I've always actually liked foxes. Even as a child, I really liked foxes. I had like, foxes were always one of my favorite animals. I like that they're sneaky. I like that they work through problems. But that they're not venomous, right? They're not snakes. And that they are kind of, they're really great problem solvers, because foxes are like self-deprecating just enough to get shit done. Like, they're willing to take sort of, a few hits, and then kind of in order to just confuse you enough to see before you realize what's happened, which is, we shot at the fox, he ran away. Turns out he circled back, and underneath the sleeping guard dog's nose got something, right? Oh, and now he's gone again. Shit. Like, that's what foxes are really good at doing.
But foxes,
sorry,
on the flip side, mythologically speaking, foxes on all these stories are kind of the roguish outsider, but they're still kind of in the super tribe, right? Like, you may not be able to depend on the. So actually, I think isn't it even in Chronicles of Narnia, right?
Well,
that they do, right?
So it's
they have fox spies.
This is the thing. Yeah, this is a good. I was going to bring this up at some point. So our co-host Fred pointed this out, and I had forgotten this. So thanks to Fred. I don't know if this episode's going to come out first or that one. A new one. We have a new series coming out with Fred about British ghost stories. It's going to be really cool. The first one's already in the can, so hopefully that'll come out soon. So thank you, Fred. So this is not in the book version of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but in the movie version of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I think this is a slight change from the Lewis's original lore, but I like it. In the movie version of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the fox is a spy for Aslan, and is actually, because he looks kind of like a wolf, Mogrim's secret wolf police don't know what to do with him at first. They don't trust him, but he's kind of wolfish enough, right? That he sort of, for a little bit, manages to sort of skirt that the repression of the White Witch, and he's actually working behind the scenes as essentially a secret agent, or maybe even better, saboteur, on behalf of Aslan. This is an expansion of the lore from the books, but I really like it. Fred pointed this out. And that's like the quintessential. Again, foxes can be bad, just like lions can be bad. But if in the world of Narnia, Aslan is lion and is good / God, spoiler, then maybe then the Mr. Fox is good, but he's very sneaky. and he throws, I mean, it's literally throws the wolves off the scent. Literally is what he does. And guess what? He lies in order to serve the greater good and protect, right, the children, and to buy time before the forces of Aslan can be marshaled. And I think that that's just a great example of a based fox, right? Also, Rupert Everett, I think, voices him. Awesome, right? Like a based fox. Like, he knows he's a fox. He knows he's good at lying. He knows he's good at subterfuge. Subterfuge and lying by themselves, not good. But when it's that, or literally be consumed by this evil, well, what are you going to do, right? And even though this is a slight lore addition to the original book, I think this falls in line with Lewis too. Lewis is not a Kantian. Lewis would never say, "Oh, you can't lie to order to save people," right? Like, the secret police are coming for you. Oh, I must tell the truth. Like, this is like, of course you should lie to protect somebody who's going to be killed by an evil force, right? Of course you should do that. It doesn't make lying correct, but otherwise people are going to be eaten, right? That's more important. Right, like, Lewis is is very much writing from an Anglican, not a Puritan perspective. And so I do think that this lore change that was made in the movies does reflect this. Like, of course you should do that. What are you going to do? You're going to tell the secret police, Mogrim, the head wolf, where the kids are? What is wrong with you, right? Like, you shouldn't do that at all. Of course you should throw them off the scent. That, and who better to do that than foxes? They're sneaky. They're kind of like a wolf, sort of, but they're just wolf-like enough.
They're kind of half and half, right?
They're wolf-like enough to know how wolves think, but they're
well,
not.
and they do not. So foxes, they're. I was thinking about this for a while, actually. So it's like, how do you? It was like, how do you control AIs, right, that are smarter than you? I was like, actually, we already have this problem somewhat solved in human society. We know how to control humans that are smarter than us. How do you typically do that? Through their family, right? You take their wife and kids hostage, right,
Yep.
so to speak. And they'll do it in nice ways, like in China's Forbidden City, or there's all sorts of ways that this happens, not just in China, but other the part of the point of the royal court is twofold, right? It's both as a palace and as a cage, right? But ultimately, like lions, how they're going to stand. You could see the logic because their power comes from their social hierarchy. Whereas, so there's certain things that they must do, or else they die. Period. Right. However, for foxes, it's not clear because they're just one individual. Maybe they have ties, maybe they don't have ties, right? They go have kids, and then the kids are chilling on their own, right? Like, so they're capable metaphysically of moving between these spaces because, and this gets to an important part of this diagram that I sent Colin, which is this line, this kind of potentially ugly line to people. It draws a line between the warm-blooded and the cold-blooded creatures, right? The warm-blooded, part of the reason for the fox, right, being able to play all sides is because he's warm-blooded. It's like, yeah, you're a mammal, I'm a mammal, like, we get each other. You can't deal with a snake. They're fucking reptiles, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's like the scorpion sort of situation, right? Like
it's in my nature.
Certainly, the snakes are going to be cunning, and they're going to be cunning, right? Like, they don't, at the end of the day, they don't really need like, foxes live so they don't live in an explicit family dominance hierarchy, but they do live in sort of like this broader ecosystem, right? Of like, hey, I can't eat too many rabbits because I'll die. I can't eat too many hens or I'll die, right? But and they do need to keep. So there is a little bit more logic. They do need to eat every day. They're cranking all these things. Whereas for snakes, like, they got to eat like once a week, man. And then they're chilling, and then they're snaking around, right? Like, the rules are just so different for snakes that, like, it is actually difficult for a lot of people to deal with them, right? And of course, you're more concerned with the snake in the grass, right? Versus, right. I didn't see the snake at all. This was the issue. As opposed to fox, it was like, I don't know what to do with this guy, right? Because I can do business with him, but he might go eat my chicken, and he might fuck me on the business deal. Like, the fox kind of poses a deeper metaphysical problem for people, which there you go.
Well, yeah, no, you make a good point. Foxes are sort of inherently liminal. They exist between, right, these categories, and
Hmm.
that is their danger, right? And if you get a fox who's has no principles, it's again
Yeah.
you get Reynard from the original medieval tales, right? Who's not a good guy, right? You shouldn't
Yep.
root for him. You can laugh with him a bit. It's funny, in a dark, very dark way. And there's maybe a lesson to be learned, right? Like from any good trickster tale. But he's not like a good guy. But the counter example of Reynard is, is at least the movie version of Mr. Fox, right? From Narnia. He's he looks like he's going to be a Reynard, and he's not. Oh, he's something very else. He's very much his own thing, but he's willing to put himself at great risk, great personal risk. Spoiler, to do the right thing, and he's doing the right thing in the way that he knows how to, which is not heroic. He's not heroic. He is inherently duplicitous, and nobody knows where he stands, and he's willing to do that in order to do the right thing. And he will probably be maligned, right? And if you know the scene from the movie, right, the beavers don't like him because they think he's part of the wolf pack, the secret police, and he's not. And then the wolf pack don't know what to do with him either. And the whole time he's just kind of like, I'm Mr. Fox, and I'm going to do the thing that I'm going to do. And again, if you get a bad fox, that's a really bad combination, right? Inherently, like, not sociopathic per se, but like very like too chaotic, right? You don't know what to do with him. But if you get a good fox, he might be that one little thing that helps turn the tide, not in like his great power, because he doesn't have that, but in his great timing and in his ability to read a situation, and to read a situation, like Elliott's been saying, outside of the box, and to go,
Hmm.
I'm going to self-deprecate just enough here, or maybe as much as I need to here, to ensure outcomes that are better. So, I mean, obviously I'm very biased, but I very much am a fox. And I think to tie this back into the sort of the hyper autist right-wing stuff that people have been talking about online, the answer to a fox problem is not to get rid of all foxes, because you can't. There will always be foxes. The answer to that, the trick to that, is to get better foxes and let them go do good Mr. Fox stuff. Probably behind the scenes. You probably won't get it all the time. And you know what? You're going to have some bad foxes in the mix too. But guess what? If you only have lions running after foxes, and you're like, we just need more lions, you're going to get also bad lions in the mix, because you're always going to have good
Hmm.
and bad. And
Hmm.
lions are going to just roar, run, roar, and the foxes are going to and like run in their holes. And like the lion's like, I'll dig down deeper in the hole. And what is fantastic Mr. Fox? We'll just keep digging. We'll just keep going. We'll find other ways to do fox stuff underground. We're really good at this. We are foxes. Well, I could snap you in half in one bite if you catch us, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, and then the lions sit down and go, geez, I guess, and I think this is the problem with sort of the eternal boomer con, as people have been saying online, is they go, oh, well, we gave it a good shot, we roared a lot, and I guess we're just gonna lose. And you're like, oh my gosh, why'd you even roar? Why'd you even try anything if you're not willing
It's
to
it's
do what
it's
it takes
it's
to
the example
win?
of the degenerate lion, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And
well,
again,
and
this is not, I'm not arguing against lions. You also need based lions. But this
but you
idea that
actually need
foxes are
lions.
inherently bad is just ridiculous. Of course you need foxes on your side. You want foxes, and I do think you might disagree with me a bit, Elliot, here, but I think that this is a little bit of Yarvin's dark elves. There's something
Oh yeah, no, I
fox-like
agree.
about them.
I agree. No,
Yeah.
and I think that Yarvin actually is calling he in that sense is trying to do a call out to all foxes, right? Because there's a lot of foxes who are hella frustrated. Foxes
Yeah.
and snakes, by the way, too, because they are different and
You
they're
freaking
useful for different
Slytherins.
things.
You
I
Slytherins.
know, right?
Keep going.
I know, right? But basically, he's calling out to both of them, right? To be like, hey, let's go find some lions that are actually worth backing, because essentially what we're running into with these, with like the not just Republicans, but frankly anybody who is pretending to be a lion right now, is you have a lot of frankly cowardly lions, right?
Yeah.
Where and you look at it, right, and or just frankly lions that are being whispered to by the wrong foxes too,
Yep.
right? Like
Oh yeah.
that there's plenty of people who are out there who you know are the liberty movement is the most frustrating one, right? Because essentially all the quote unquote lions out there are just foxes in lions clothing,
Yep.
right? Which I think maybe is what the right wingers,
Well,
what those guys
and
are
like,
trying to say.
and the instant they actually really should, that, like, the call to adventure happens, and they're like, hey, it's
Yeah,
your chance to stand up for the things you believe in, and they go, it's only 2 weeks, and you're like, fucking hell.
yeah,
The thing we fucking hired you for, right? Be a lion. Hell, but then people might not like me. And for me, right, obviously it's like, it's
yeah,
taken me a little bit to
yeah.
come into the fact realization that I am really just a fox in the way that and I'm not going to transition. All right, relax. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not
Yeah,
trans
yeah, yeah,
species, but like, you realize that you're like, well, as a fox like person, why do you care what people think about you? Or for me, is like the fox part of me is like, okay, what you do is you come out like, you make some sort of weird, bizarre statement that like is very like very ambiguous, and then you just implement all the policies to ensure that that it's not 2 weeks, and that people just can do what they want. And you go, oh yeah,
yeah.
we really need to be healthy and careful, and I'm not going to implement any of this shit. That's the fox like part of me, and that just, it does not compute, because it's a very different kind of way of interacting with power. So for me, I'm like, of course you say something sort of milk toast, and then you just do things because that's of
Right.
course what you do. But lions don't. These kinds of lions that we have just don't do that. Like, but then I might not look like a
No, they're
lion,
well
and you want to shake them and be like,
to
it
to
doesn't matter.
to, to
It
their
doesn't
friends
matter.
though. Like this is that what we have is like a lot of people, and this is the issue with like again particularly lib right, and in the liberty movement, right, is that they'll get really excited by some lions that are just frankly paper tigers, right? Like
Pretty
they're
much.
lions on paper, right? Like so you got all these guys in Congress that are like you know doing these feel good measures, and it's like dude, like we need some lions. And it's interesting because I was like, dude, how did we get so soy boy, right? And it's like, well, what I think I've said this on this show before too, but like essentially, dude, World War I followed by World War II is how you just wipe out all of the brave, all of the dragons, right? All the dragons got wiped out in World War I and II because and all the lions too, for that matter, right? And so we only had foxes and the really lame, decrepit lions left, right? And so we're slowly, potentially, but this is why we had toxic. It's like, was masculine? No, we didn't always have toxic masculine because you had men who were able to negotiate the difference between being strong and being a tyrant, right? But
Right.
we
Yeah.
were left with only the weak tyrants, not the, you know what I mean? Not the, we were only left with the bad princes that don't know what the fuck they're doing, right?
Well, yeah, and
And so
I would
now
make
we
an
have,
argument that tyrants are always inherently at their core weak.
no, for sure,
They're
for sure,
weak people,
absolutely.
and that's why they're so violent, because they're weak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so we only have people that are willing to do violence in stupid ways and people that are incapable of effective violence, right?
Pretty
Like
much. And by violence
it's,
here, for purposes of the algorithm, we only mean force, which is all what
hmm,
politics. We just
hmm.
mean political force in the
Yeah,
very
yeah,
German sense of Gewalt, which means violence or
yeah,
force or effort, or
right.
it's this general sense of pushing towards something. That's what we mean.
Because literally all of this counts for like corporate life or even like church life too, right? Like, what are
Or
you gonna
family
do?
life.
You're right. Like,
I
what are you
mean,
gonna
it's
do
anything.
versus like the little old grandmother that's bullying everybody? And what does the priest or preacher do? Half the time they just kowtow because oh my goodness, they don't know what to do with the little old grandmother that's bullying everybody. But she's a fucking bully. and she needs somebody to say, no, we're
Yeah.
not going to do it. I don't care how much like whipping up you do of the everything. Like you're not allowed to do this. Like,
Well, and very, and I say this too as somebody. Well, I think we've talked about this before, if not with you, maybe with other people on the show here. I mean, what have the past 3 years? Of course, it's been going on for like 100 years or more, but the past 3 years, it's been very clear that within the church, broadly construed, however you want to define church, there, I mean, there are just all people in positions of authority kowtowed to the crazy little grandmas who are worried about everything and scared about everything, and that justification was used to browbeat well-intentioned people, parishioners, congregants, whatever you want to call them, depending on your tradition, into going along with something that really runs contrary to every single Abrahamic faith tradition, I would argue. And that's
sure.
a real fucking shame. And there were some lions in the pulpit who pushed back and did really cool lion stuff, and I think that's awesome. And there were a few, I heard of some sort of based foxes in the pulpit, but man, a lot of them were either weak ass, lame ass lions, and sadly the majority of them were just cringe foxes who were just like, we'll just like play mind games, theological mind games with people, and just make everyone feel very guilty about breathing God's air that he gave you to breathe. And we will make you feel really guilty about wanting to take sacraments, which to this day, I mean, I want to nail more than 95 theses on every single Lutheran church door.
Wait, so I'm confused. I'm not familiar with this particular event you're talking about, because even Catholics don't guilt people over the sacrament.
Oh, yeah, no, well, I mean, hey, it's sort of broadly, we won't go on a full tangent, but it's connected to this. 100%. Both. It's the Missouri Synod too. Both, not just the LCA. Both main American Lutheran synods groups made theological arguments about why you should stop taking sacraments during the COOF. Which
during the
is, if you know anything about the history of the life of Luther, where he's literally administering sacraments to people dying of plague, and he's exposing himself. By the way,
Black Death.
Totally based, like totally, like this is what it is to
absolutely be based.
In the words of Kurt Cobain, he's serving the servants, right? He's doing what and you talk about only 100 80 years ago you had priests running out on a battlefield administering last rite sacraments while like not trying to not get hit by machine gun fire, or just standing in front of the battlefield perform. I mean, like, this era, we don't have them in the church anymore. If they're there, they are dormant, because it's like during the COOF there was just we don't really need, for Lutherans, sacraments are very much a thing. We don't really need to take communion. And then you heard arguments too that were like, if we take communion during the COOF, we are actually like blaspheming against the sacrament. I mean, you heard some insane, and I will say evil shit that was thrown out.
Oh yeah.
And if that's not cause for more than 95 theses nailed on every single Lutheran church door, then I don't know what is. Because that is a total degradation of what our tradition stands for. That's just speaking from that particular instance from the past 3 years. Maybe that's an autistic Lutheran rant that no one wants to hear, but I think
but I think it's actually very deep and important.
Yeah, that like, the idea that, well, if you if you take communion, and we're not even talking about reasonable measures, distanced, anything like that. No, they didn't even have it. They stopped, and they also stopped baptizing for a while, which
is extraordinarily evil. Lutherans, I mean, especially because in that tradition,
we baptize infants in our tradition. And we are infant baptism tradition. And there's and it's not just like we do it because tradition. There's actually like a real deep theological reason why we do it. And you don't have to be, if your church doesn't do that or your tradition doesn't do that, that's fine, right? Like, I'm just saying, for us, that was a real thing. It always has been a thing, never has not been a thing. And for 3 years, people decided it wasn't a thing anymore, which really shows you how little people care. And I mean, and it's like the idea that, well, if we get together and we perform sacraments, somebody might die, and it's like, motherfucker, you're gonna die. Every
That's
Ash,
the whole point of the
every
sacraments.
what happens every Ash Wednesday?
The
That
whole
you are
premise of
dust,
the sacraments is
and
to
to dust
cover
you shall
you in
return.
case you die. Right?
Yes,
Like it's just
yes, it's
literally no,
literally.
but this is the thing that like
I know.
and this is why I tell Christians and not you, but I tell like general Christians, I say, look, when I look into the eyes of Christians, I don't see the fear of God, I see the fear of man and this world, and that's why I don't join your church, because none of you actually believe the shit you're saying. And I know that theologically speaking, blah 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 doesn't matter, but I'm like, why would I run with a tribe and grow up my children, so to speak? I don't have any, but hypothetically, grow up my children with people who are not God fearing first and man fearing second, right? Like Christians have to. This is the come to Jesus moment, right? Fear God. Don't fear a fucking anything else, right?
You're
It just
gonna
is
die
totally
regardless. Well,
outrageous
yeah,
to
and
me.
I mean, without going too much onto this, because it's a little beyond the
No,
scope.
totally,
Yeah,
totally.
just
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
like, no, there was and I'm not alone. This is not like oh, Colin's making a brave last stand shit. No, 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 no. There's just there are many Lutherans who are like, y'all are fucking nuts. You don't respect our tradition. You don't respect
Even the
God's law.
Missouri Synod, like, what the fuck?
The Missouri Synod caved really badly, and they and we won't talk
Because
about that
they're
right
weak
now.
lions. They're weak
They're very
lions. They're
weak
not even
lions. Yeah.
foxes, is the thing, right? Like, and that's
So
I think that's the thing.
ELCA weak lions, rather no. ELCA weak foxes, Missouri Synod weak lions, and I think most people,
Exactly.
yeah, that's I think what it is. So anyhow,
Yep.
that's thank you for bringing us back to lions and foxes. But yeah, no, but this lack, this this deep lack of 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 based foxes was very clear, because what you needed, in a situation like this during the past 3 years, wink wink nudge nudge, what was going on, the lions were getting browbeaten really badly, and I saw lions give
Mm-hmm.
up, in a way that was sad, and it was during that time that I realized I think I might be a fox, and maybe I need to lean into being a fox, because
Mm-hmm.
I've never been this lion thing. It's not that I'm not willing to show bravery when I need to. It's just I don't like to be loud. I don't like to. I mean, as loud as I am on this episode here, right? And when we talk, like in person, I kind of just would prefer, like, if I don't know you, I'm not necessarily going to initiate contact with you. I'll be polite, but I'm not like you know what I mean? Like, it takes a while to get to know me. I'm kind of more of a fox, but I'm also a good observer of humans and of what they're doing. And it was during this time period where I was like, you know what? Nobody else is being fox-like. So maybe I'm going to do things like show up to virtual church meetings, because again, everything is online. Show up to virtual church meetings and just like throw wrenches in arguments and stuff. Be like, but what about this? What about this? Just ask questions that are designed to completely completely derail all this shit that was being crammed down our throats. And people did not like me. I got called out. I got chided for doing that as like a rabble rouser. And I'm like, I'm just asking questions. And also, by the way, Luther did the same kind of shit. Why do we really have to do it this way?
Like the fucking irony of calling a Lutheran a rabble rouser again.
I know.
These people should just go home. Like they should go home. They should stop. Like, again, I'm an outsider to all this stuff, but I'm just saying they need to stop being Lutherans, right? Like all of these people.
You have an outside. I would. My whole stance is this: as somebody who now finds himself largely without I find myself with a tradition without a church, something like that. I have a tradition, I have a theological framework, and I have no church to do stuff with. I'm like, I would love to have a Lutheran church. Can we have one? Do we want to have one?
An actual.
Would that be great?
Church, right?
Wouldn't that be great? Can we have one? And you know what? It's been as depressing as that is. It's been heartening to find that I'm not alone. There are people out there who are in the exact same place. Wouldn't it be nice if we had one? Anyhow, that's enough of like inside baseball there. But
yes.
that's yeah. So there is a real strong tactical strategery argument to be made for having foxes on your side. And I don't know why this distrust of foxes is so baked into online right-wing discourse. I don't really get that. It doesn't make any sense to me. But maybe you have thoughts on that, Elliott, because I'm still baffled by it.
No, I think it's a complete I think that it is foxes conning people through saying that we. So really, what the foxes are saying, they're saying,
Wait, are you going to
"Oh my
finally answer
goodness."
the question that Uvis asked all those years ago? What do they actually say? Let's hear it straight from Elliott. What does the fox
A
actually
lot of
say?
really tired definition haggling, but yes, like basically, like, and it's hilarious, by the way, that Machiavelli even compares foxes to lawyers, right? And what do the right wing discourse people do? They're haggling about rules and definitions and shit all the time, like lawyers, right?
Yeah,
Like, and winning in history and not in fact. But anyway, point
right.
being is that I think that the like, if you look at the podcaster sphere, there's way too many of them, right? There's a lot of talking heads, there's a lot of noise, right? And they're all they're saying that there are too many foxes in my berry patch, right?
Right.
We're running out of grapes, is really what they're saying. They're like, I might actually have to get, a real fucking job at some point, or if not a job, but a side hobby or whatever, right? Like,
Right.
I
I might have to touch.
it's
You say that I might have to touch grass at some point.
yeah, and it's not the case for everybody, right? Because a lot of the people are family men, right? But I mean, the thing is that being familiar with the Liberty space, there's plenty of family men who are con men, right? Like, you can be a con man
Oh
and a
yeah.
father. It turns out
Yes.
that's possible. So, I'm just saying, like,
Well,
there's a
I
lot
think
of
we're making.
and,
It sounds. Sorry. Go ahead.
and of course, I have a theory cell too, right? So don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. It's
So
not
am
like
I.
I'm doing anything, right? But what I'm saying is, like, I'm also not pretending like I'm doing anything. I am explicitly not doing anything. Like, just to
I
be
think.
clear.
I think I'm. Yeah. I'm not doing anything, quote unquote, in that fox sense. I'm not doing anything. Of course, I'm
No,
Elliott. Elliott, I would never do anything ever. As I,
no, no. I'm not.
as I lean
I'm
on
not
my
doing anything
fox
in the
tree,
snake
like the
sense, and that
fantastic Mr.
I'm
Fox.
just,
Yeah, I'm leaning
I'm
there
just
chewing on
sunning
my
myself.
tree. Yeah. Oh no, I'm not doing anything.
I
I would
just,
never dream of doing anything.
I just ate like a whole ass hog, and now I am just chilling out in the sun, just chilling, just digested for a week and a half. Like,
Yeah, you snakes. No, I mean, but again, I'm very fox-like. You could press me. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. What are you? What are you doing? Are you doing something? I'm not doing anything. I mean, I will. Yeah, of course, I would never dream of doing anything. Wink. Because I'm a fox, and you don't need to know what I'm doing or not doing. I do what I do. I'm very fox-like, and that's okay. This is a good way of living. It's unfortunate that we live in a world where you have to be like that, but it's a world built by horrible foxes. You might need some foxes to kind of uh fight back. Fox, I know how
no,
foxes
for
think.
sure.
I've lived with
It,
foxes my whole life. Like, that's been my professional career up until now, is pure cringe fox, and I know how they think. So let's use it.
well, and there's quite a few snakes in that direction too,
And
actually,
there's some
right?
outright
It's not
snakes.
just
Outright snakes
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's plenty of snakes, because that's the funny thing. Is like, well, that's the funny thing is you'll tend to get like very frustrated and worked up about a lot of things, right? Which is fair, is reasonable, it's good and human emotion to do. And I just
I'm a
don't get as worked
reactionary
up.
person.
Well, yeah, no, as foxes are reactionaries, right?
Yes, we are.
um,
Why do you
but
think we make those weird
it's
noises at night? Ah,
and
we go
so
out
and
and
so
go.
actually, I will lightly defend one element of the diagram, which people may or may not end up seeing. You'll see that the dragon is at the top and the fox is at the bottom. This is not a subtle snake anti-fox hagiography, right? Of like putting the fox at the bottom.
Typical
The
pro snake, anti fox bias. We've seen this
my
before. Yeah.
my shadow synthesis is on top and your shadow synthesis is on bottom. No, but basically, the reason why the fox is on the bottom is actually a little bit of a compliment, honestly, certainly with their political perspective, because you'll notice on the left and right, I have these black and white arrows, one that's pointing down and one that's pointing up. This is a completely not at all subtle reference to the Kabbalistic tree of life, and the pillars, Jacob and Boaz, right, and all that good stuff. But essentially, like, what I'm saying here is that the fox is the full manifestation of the spirit of the lion and the spirit of the snake, right? Whereas the dragon is kind of like not necessarily an anti-manifestation, but it's a full abstraction of those two elements, right? So
But yeah, and it's also
there's
it also works because right, unless the cryptozoologists might disagree, but I haven't yet to see a dragon. It doesn't mean they don't exist, but I've yet to
right.
see one.
They are set apart.
They're real, but I haven't seen one. I have
Yes.
seen a fox, and I know that they're real.
Yes.
So
Right.
that's yeah.
It's not even crazy, right? So I think that, and typically speaking, dragons were kind of like the unknown. So I think about a dragon like an executive, right? So they have to be clever like a fox, but like they also have to lead a leadership structure, right? So they can't just be bound, but they have to be sneaky, unlike a lion, right? So this is why like the classic dragon trope totally works, and many fictions have dragons being the secret power behind the throne, all that shit. Like it totally makes sense, but essentially, like the foxes, like being on the bottom is not a diss. It's like actually these guys are the most practical. Like you don't be looking for dragons, right? Go befriend your neighborhood fox, right? Because they're the one who will get you through, not the dragon.
Yeah, no, yeah. So foxes befriend your neighborhood lions because they're going to be the focal point. They're going to draw the attention away from you.
Yeah, and help you operate better.
Help you operate. And lions befriend your local neighborhood fox. Maybe you throw us a chicken every once in a while. Okay, that might suck a bit. Obviously, for the chicken, it's no bueno. But the chickens were going to be eating any other food. It's okay, right? Give us a chicken. We'll get your chicken and go, hey, thanks for that chicken. By the way, did you need open coat any of these things which are now right? Like look at what I have. It's the one of those libertarian memes about, do you want to see what I have? It's like, oh, let me show you the craziest shit I have. Whoa. Yeah, like
and lions feel free to chase every single snake, but before you kill him, check in with your fox, make sure if he's a secret snake on your side or not. And foxes, don't expose your snakes, let your snakes remain hidden. Right?
What have we learned from the memes? No step on snack.
Don't step on snack.
No step on snack. I mean, we've learned this. Let's internalize this and start practicing it. Yeah.
Right. Only if snake is being all aggro. But on average, see, the thing is that snakes are usually cowardly, right? Like, and this is again, on the whole diagram, I have snakes maxed out cunning, minimized courage. Like a snake almost makes it a virtue out of being anti-courageous, right? And almost, not quite, but almost. Yeah. Because the thing is that like a fox is balancing courage and cunning, like being in the middle of them, right? A little bit more on the cunning than maybe on the courage side sometimes, but knowing like when to stand and fight versus when to run away, right? Do a tactical retreat. The lions, like it's kind of weird, right? Because so it's sort of like, since the snake so depends on cunning, they cannot afford to be any amount of not cunning. They have to be all cunning all the time, right? Versus the lions, they can't afford to be even the slightest bit uncourageous. And I think this is the real issue that we've had, is that we've trained our lions to be uncourageous, right? By not just like, you see a lot of blind support for Trump supporters, and I don't think they're backing the right horse fundamentally, right? But like, ultimately they're doing a correct thing, which is, fuck you guys, this is my guy, I'm sticking with him. Yeah. Like if you're gonna try to support lions, that's basically the kind of support you have to give them. Well,
as many people like, for example, TLE has pointed this out, and many others, that like, if you're going to support Trump, you kind of have to burn the boats.
Yes.
That's the only way.
Right.
And this channel does not make an official statement on Donald Trump. This channel is
yeah, we are entirely too cunning to care about.
But if you're going to, right, in a Machiavellian sense, then you really have to be a lion, all in lion.
You have to be all the way. And the problem with Trump, right, is that, I mean, I kind of hesitate to kind of call him either, frankly. Like, he, in my mind, he's a little bit of a defective lion, in both the courageous and the cunning aspect, because again, he doesn't seem to be able to make good. Like the thing is, so actually, and we see this time and time again, a lot of people will say like, well, Trump's heart was in the right place, but gosh, he made bad staffing calls. And it's like, oh, he was incapable of putting the correct foxes around him. Fascinating, right? Like he put foxes that were not aligned, and then the foxes that could have been aligned with his goals, he fired. Right. Yep. So like, let that be a lesson to lions, right? Like, foxes are gonna be fucking annoying, dude. Like, you will not enjoy when a fox is like, well, actually, but you really do need to hear them out, you know?
Oh yeah, foxes are the trickster figures, right? In many world folklore traditions, right? Like they're the ones who are like, and again, trickster does not always mean you're a good guy, but a trickster can be good. A tricksters mix up the order of things, right? Tricksters, whether that's a raven, whether it's a fox, whether it's a hare, whether it's a raccoon, like tricksters change the order of things. But also you could also make an argument that tricksters announce the order that is already changing. The tricksters see the change already happening, and then they go, look at the change, and it's like, stupid trickster, we don't care about your, oh my gosh, everything's different now. And then like the trickster's like, well, okay, but I'm a head out. Bye. Like I did try to say,
no, totally.
Nobody listened to me, and I'm gonna just, be by myself, I guess. With so yeah.
Well, and another thought on that point, because I think this is again extremely important for our continued analysis on all this stuff, right? Which is to say that don't get tricksters confused with like out and out monsters, right? Yeah. Like ancient mythology doesn't necessarily do a really great job at describing monsters in ways that we would conceptualize them, but monsters to ancient peoples were always giants, and like stone-skinned giants, right? So for them, a monster was something that I can't deal with and that like is outside my ability to comprehend. And so yeah, a giant that you can't shoot an arrow into is really fucking scary, right? That can live natively in a frosty climate, right? Like really, really scary guy. But like a monster for us almost has to be a little bit more metaphysical, which is why Colin and I would tend to fall back on Cthulhu and the horror mythologies and whatnot of the modern era to really plumb those depths, right? Yeah, you like that. You like that, right? So essentially, like a fox is not a Lovecraftian queer horror. It is, tricksters are re-emphasizing categories as they bounce around and into the different categories. You see what I mean? Like they use the existence of those categories to do their thing. If those categories didn't exist, then all you would have left is brute energy, which is a lion, right? So foxes require categorization almost even more than a lion, honestly, right? Like, but lions require hierarchy, right? So
you're trying to say that they're just inherently lower right?
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like foxes are by definition, almost by definition, like lib right. Although you can have some foxes that are off left, because off left is also okay with categories, right? They're just a little bit more Hegelian, or they're older school categories. They're not like fuzzy categories, right? Like, but regardless, point being is that like, the lion requires hierarchy, the fox requires categories. And so there's a certain sense in which like everybody wants to theoretically say, oh, I can't lose. But like ultimately speaking, it's not clear. Like the thing is that the culture war is a huge ass psyop for the ruling class who are using all this shit to divide and distract everybody. And I 100%. Get that, I get that everybody is super fucking annoying from all sides, and it's really bright and shiny and all that stuff. But like ultimately speaking, if you can see past the fact that, say, the goddamn yellow blue war over there is, again, see, the reason why I bring up the World War II, World War III, One and Two thing is because I reckon that the only amount of tea left on the entire European continent was in the Slavosphere. And they're dumping all their money to eliminate the max amount of tea that they can. Right? Like they're like, you know what I mean? They're like, crush all the lions.
In the words of Monty Python, it's a theory. It's definitely a theory.
Well, I
It's a
mean,
theory.
Putin is the only dragon I see amongst world leaders, right?
Kinda, yeah.
I mean, maybe Xi Jinping is, but it's really hard to tell because it's a little bit too subtle for me, Chinese politics. You know what I mean? Like, I can't keep track, But
Yeah.
with Putin, it's like, dude, he's got the lion, he's got the fox. That's why the elites fucking hate him, because they have a tough time touching him and he won't play ball.
Yeah.
Like,
No, yeah, I think he has a lot of dragon energy, and again, that's not a compliment. It's a statement of what it is.
it's just a fact, man.
Yeah, he's got a lot of dragon energy. He's I don't know.
Big, big D energy.
It's the biggest D. But we are marked safe from nuclear annihilation for yet another week. So thanks to Musk for that, at least. This episode a little bit, but thank you for not allowing that thing to happen that almost people wanted. Yeah, I don't know. But again, like fighting dragons, if you don't have Bard out there with his black arrow ready to go, I'm referencing the Hobbit here, maybe don't kick the dragon too much because do you have a plan for the dragon? No.
Well, maybe this is an issue with a lot of foxes, right? Is that they think, oh, because I am, and of course they don't think this explicitly because I haven't gone through all the laborious levels of autism that we have, but basically they think, oh, I have synthesized my shadow self being a lion snake, and therefore I can take on the dragons. It's like, well, I mean, not necessarily, man. Like, dragons are a whole ass different beast, dude. Like, know your enemy, essentially, right?
Yeah, know your enemy. Yeah, I think this is I think maybe one thing I was thinking about here is this is a good segue into that is that let's see if I can recall it with my level of mental exhaustion right now. It might be gone. No, I'll attempt to bring it back here. Foxes. This is it. Lions can't afford to not believe they will win. Doesn't mean they will win, but they can't. They have to essentially burn the boats, right? They have to really be like, this is the project we are doing. Foxes and lions are not always going to succeed at that. But if anyone was ever going to succeed at that, it would be a lion, right? I think with foxes recognize that if I go all in on this, it could be really bad for me. And so I think that's also a reason too why people sort of on the the terminally online theory cell people don't like foxes, is because they're like, well, you're just like defeatist, or you're like, you don't believe enough. And it's like, that doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone can literally will themselves into like making changes, right? Oftentimes you have to it doesn't mean you can't make changes, but you can't. Will alone won't do it. You have to have a plan. You have to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I think foxes, in a way, this is obviously a biased thing to say because I'm a fox. I think foxes are more honest about their abilities and lack thereof. And by the way, that is also sometimes a self-fulfilling prophecy that does hurt foxes.
Well, then this is why I'm doing such a big effort to educate more foxes on metamodernism. That's why we continue to do metamodernistic topics, because metamodernism is now taking, I've been starting to poke my like libertarian brain trust about, are bioweapons weapons? Yes, unambiguously. Okay, is there any valid use for bioweapons? Yes, no. Or when at what point do you recognize a bioweapon is about to be used against you or is being used against you? Okay, cool. So bioweapons run around changing your genetic code, right? Fucking you up. Mimetic weapons, ideas so dangerous that they'll fuck up your mind, right? Like, do we see any examples of that so far? Like, do we see any examples of those being used on us? Like, just trying to kind of open this category up, because nobody is really recognizing this as a thing that, we've seen sort of lion-based mimetic warfare, but it's harder to pick out sort of foxy, snaky-based mimetic warfare, but we're in the middle of it. And people are not really recognizing, that we're in it. You see,
what we need is the Tom Hardy as Mad Max "That's Bait" gif. That's
Yeah,
bait.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what we need is that gif, just that. Like, yeah, that's bait. Yeah.
Yep. Like
Yeah.
you do not need to respond to every tweet. Like you
Right.
don't even need to read every tweet. Like, it's sort of the thing where your immune system, you actually have, like, you smell something and you're like, "Oh, that's sour." You don't need to eat it, dude. Like you don't need to eat it to prove that it's sour. Like what is your whole thing like really, oh, if I don't eat it then and I die, then I'll know it was no, dude, like don't eat sour milk, bro. It's not good for you, right? Like don't eat sour memes. Like it's not good for you, dude. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of, and this is a little bit of self preaching, but you know what I mean. Like fucking, it's. I think a lot of people are still sort of in the modernist, like, oh, it's fine, nothing can hurt us, and it's like, nah, man. Like especially during the thing, you see like how much fear people were under, right? And how like these memes really fucked people up. And it's like, dude, like turn off the news. It's
Well,
just a sludge factory, right?
and this is definitely not unique to me, or like a lot of people experience this. I mean, I'm so brand new to this way of thinking. So I'm
Mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm.
claiming like, oh, I've always been this way. No, I mean, I think it was the past 3 years that snapped me out of a lot of really bad memetic frameworks I had, and it was because what snapped me out, and it wasn't all at once, right? It was a series of all at onces progression, right? You have these series of epiphanies, but the main sort of, as best I can determine, the main impetus for that was that I got tired of being so scared, and I think
Yes.
that is so basic and true. And I think that, I mean, the theory cell bullshit we're throwing out at you today comes much later, right? The real impetus is, aren't you scared? Aren't you tired of being scared all the time like this? Doesn't this make your quality of life really crap?
Aren't you tired of losing all the time
Yeah, aren't
and
you tired
being
of
on the
losing all the time?
losing end?
I
Yeah.
mean, how many L's do you want to take in your life? Because eventually you're going to take the biggest L, which is death. So up until that point, do you want to try to not take all the L's? Yeah, that actually kind of sounds nice. That actually sort of, it's nice. That's like a, and this, I think a lot of people in our sphere, and I'm definitely guilty of it at times, poo that very basic, almost Hobbit like, it always comes back to the Hobbit for me, Hobbit like kind of understanding. But then no, that's like the core of it. That's the kernel, the seed out of which like everything else blooms, right? Is it like that? Oh, I don't like living like this. And I don't like being told to live like this. And I don't like being told I can't live a better life. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. That's not fun. That's not good. Does not
100%.
that really is what it all comes back down to, right? Because just as, and this, Mr. Tree of Life, man, the tree blooms outwards and expands in all this in its glory, but you can also trace it back down to the roots. Then back out
Yeah.
again. Right. And it's sort of like, oh yeah, but it is also just this thing of like, wouldn't you prefer less crap in your life? Wouldn't you prefer to feel better about yourself? Not in a cringe way, but like in a, like a feel like, oh, I have purpose for being here. Like there's some meaning to this. Isn't that nice? Isn't that good? Yes. It's very good. It's very nice. And so I guess to sort of slowly start wrapping it up, I think, this is not a, we'll see what title I give this episode. It might be somewhat, spicy, but this is not an argument against lions at all, and I'm not a fox supremacist. That's the least fox thing you could be, a fox supremacist. Foxes just want to be foxes. That they don't care. Who cares? Oh, man. We don't want only foxes. Foxes really don't want that at all. Only foxes, by the way, don't go to that website. It'll scar you for life. But that's a joke. But the argument is that there are different ways of interacting with power. A lot of people find themselves on the spectrum, some of us more than others, somewhere in the middle or to one side or the other. And if you find yourself more towards the fox side or more towards the lion side, I think the idea is, for Machiavelli, of course, these two archetypes were kind of continually working together in the mind of the prince. I think at least my take on it is, some people will always tend more towards one or the other. So find those people, right? Foxes, find your foxes, lions, find your lions, and then find each other, and then work together. And that's hard, right? That's easy to say and very hard to do, but work together and complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. Because lions aren't always strong and foxes aren't always as smart as they think they are. Right? It depends, and it's varied. And I do think that if I can make one claim for both of us, Elliott, to something slightly original, even quasi-original, I think that this is a cornerstone of kind of all of the weird right stuff we've been talking about for the past year and a half. I think this is something at the core of it, is this dynamic of acknowledging inherent differences in people, but then leveraging those differences towards something better and building something, right? Not conserving shit, but building something. So I will final thoughts, feelings, emotions, insights. I pass it to you as best I can.
No, I think that's a great way of summing up basically our continued program, because honestly, I wouldn't have been able to make this diagrammatic breakthrough if it weren't for our kind of continued contention around this area, friendly contention, obviously, but contention around this area of like, I feel like this isn't quite right. You know, there's a give and take between the intuitive and the intellectual. We have different intuitions and different intellects in it, and it leads for a lot of fruitfulness. And you know, one of the huge themes, I'm still trying to understand metamodernism myself. Like, I don't feel like, well, you know, to be clear, actually, I think that it's not any one particular thing is one issue, because it's still kind of being born, so to speak. But you know, one theme for sure about metamodernism is that it's a rebuilding, right? Like, it's like, okay, we got really good at the deconstruction during the postmodern era. Everybody did. Christians got good at deconstructing atheists. Atheists got good at deconstructing Christians. Great. We now have these amazing atomic. We can split atoms, right? This is why I kind of say that the future of metamodernism is actually like the sub-individual, right? So not the individual, because the individual used to be the family, because it was the patriarch, right? The man was the only person. Everybody else is, you know, was an attachment to the man, right? And then you unattach, you know, modularly speaking. Well, then you have modernism, which led to the atomization of people. Well, then we recognize there's these subatomic parts of ourselves where we have these wars within ourselves constantly, because we don't have a good mythology to order ourselves. So anyway, regardless of rambling, the metamodern is about rebuilding these with these parts that we've deconstructed now as a society into something that's actually workable and coherent, but also more robust than previously. Because honestly, like, and this is what a lot of the right wingers are not willing to recognize, is that the environment changed, man. We are now in a mythological ice age, I think. Yep. I think that Ragnarok is happening right now. It's not the end of the world in terms of, like, it's a cyclical world, right? But that's the trick, is that linear time is running out and we're headed back towards cyclical time. Yep. And this is the chance that we get to reset the circle into a better circle.
Well, you know, it's the end of the world as we know it. And Elliott, talking to you today, particularly about this, I feel fine. I feel fine. I feel full. I do. It's weirdly hopeful, because you recognize that this is a thing, again, to sort of end a bit where we started. You realize that it's like, oh yeah, it's always different, but it's always the same. And Wheel in the Sky keeps on turning, and all the other, you know, song references you want.
Something keeps burning or whatever, rolling.
Yeah.
I'm rolling. We're rolling.
Well,
but I mean, this is the thing. All of this, when did all this music came out? It's like fucking 80s and 90s. Yeah. That was the very, very birth. That was the end of postmodernism.
Yeah.
Right? At the beginning of...
We're rolling, and we're in an air raid vehicle, and it's how it should be, because, you know, you gotta keep moving. You can't stop. Anyhow, this is just two millennials devolving into references.
Run in. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hey, Elliott, let's have you on again as soon as our Time War schedules permit. And yeah, again, thanks to everyone for the like, comments, and subscribes and all the things. Again, I know we haven't been doing these things as episodes as frequently. That is just largely that's not from a lack of desire, and anyone who knows me will say it's not because Colin's running out of ideas. I'll never run out of ideas. It's really just from life is happening, things are semesters are happening, job stuff is happening, and that's just what it is. But we have some cool stuff in place. So hopefully over the next few months, we get some neat episodes out there. I think Elliott, I will say our quality over quantity model is working well. I think we're producing better stuff.
Nice.
It's not as frequent.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Sounds
again,
good to me.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what order everything will come out over the next week or so, but I've started doing stuff with Fred, our good friend Fred. And we're going to be looking at sort of M.R. James ghost stories, at least is the plan. We have one in the can, so that should be fun. And I will argue, and I think we make a pretty good argument in the episode, that horror is inherently philosophical, and ghost stories are maybe the most philosophical out of all kind of horror stories. So and I feel like at least that's a provocative idea, and maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree.
No, I actually totally agree with that, at least because ghosts, like, do you believe, I don't know if I said this on air or not, but like basically I've been starting to ask what I call everybody calls them neo-trads, but then there's like, people will want to say, oh no, I'm paleo-trad. I'm like, okay, you're neo-paleo-trad then, right? Like, you're not getting around with the neo. The point is, nobody is not neo right now. Everybody is neo, unless you're literally an Amazon, like, fucking tribal person, no contact. Like, everybody's neo, bro. Like there are Pakistani tribal people. There's a whole YouTube channel of getting their reactions to trying new things. And I love this, right? The issue is, once you've tried the new things, you are no longer the old tribal hermetically sealed. You are now the worldly person, right? So that tribal person is now a neo-tribal person, despite the fact that they live traditionally as per traditions that it's actually been unbroken. Contact with these memes change the tradition, right? Like, that's the nature of it. So, like, ghost stories, do you believe in ghosts is the first question I'm asking a lot of these people, right? Because I think it's a hard thing for a lot of intellectuals to just say unambiguously, yes, duh, right?
Yeah, my whole, again, we'll get into this as we keep going during the spooky season, but my response is something like, why don't you believe in ghosts? What's wrong with you? So
yeah, see, that's much better. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what's wrong with you? Yeah. Anyhow, cool. Well, hey, everyone, enjoy your weekend or week whenever this comes out, and stay tuned. We got more fun stuff. Hopefully it's fun. It's fun for us. Hopefully it's fun for you. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Peace.
Like Aaron would say, I hate the audience.
Yes, we love the audience. Bye.
We love the audience. Bye.
Bye.